So the question is, would K through 12 education savings accounts improve American education?
All right, so you said you are pro ESAs.
Yep.
Let me just make sure I understand that. Fundamentally, an ESA is the lawnmower's low. Fundamentally, an ESA is when families are incentivized to pull children out of public schools by the money that would have gone towards their child's education at that public school is then essentially given to them as a stipend.
Kind of. So essentially, if a parent chooses not to send their kid to a public school, they would then have money from the state, federal, and local governments. Would be the ideal form. Go to them, they can choose to send their kid to a private school, charter school, or use that money in a combination, like sending their kid to a private school for 3 hours a day and using private tutors for the other 2.
All right, so it's not just for parents to homeschool children. It also applies to...
It could be used for that, but it would primarily, in practice, mostly be used to allow kids from public schools to instead use that money to go to private schools. That's how, according to the data we have so far, it would most likely be used.
All right. I think that the idea behind that is potentially problematic, given the type of people that $20,000 or however,
$20,000 would be the high end. For most states, it'd probably be like $8,000 to $15,000 or $16,000.
Right. I think that one potential issue with that is that the families that are most incentivized to take that offer are going to be the low-income families who need that money the most.
Well, hang on, just a clarification. They can't just take the money. They have to actually show proof that they're sending their kid to a private school or a charter school, or show proof that they're spending it on approved educational materials.
Sure, but I think that is inherently difficult to manage.
Not really. I mean, so one way that you can implement it is you have essentially a web front, like a website, where the money is in an account, or you could do it through debit cards, but it can only be spent on already approved materials. Mm-hmm. And so they can't just take the money and run. It's relatively easy to enforce because if it's just credit an account and they can only use it on the approved materials, they can't take it and go buy cigarettes or lottery tickets.
Mm-hmm. Right, and I'm not saying that is the type of thing they would use it for. I think that it is just potentially problematic that the people that I think you're still incentivizing to take this deal are the people who need that money, who that money would matter to the most. Even if there is an approved spending list, I think there's still potentially ways around that, such as buying goods and then returning them and keeping the difference or the return money or whatever.
Just clarify though, I mean, if you implement it with money in an account that's controlled through the web front, and then for a private charter school, you got to submit proof your kid's in that school, which would be the primary use, or you can only buy the approved materials, and you're not able to return them because say you could track it through the storefront if it was returned or not. You can limit the misuse.
I think you can limit it. I don't think you can eliminate it. I think there's also ways you can resell things that wouldn't be trackable, like reselling them to a non, what's the word I'm looking for here? I don't know, reselling to individuals as opposed to corporations, ways that can't be tracked. And I think
just one thing you could do though, and I think this is relatively easy to implement in practice, submit a tip line where people can provide a tip if an individual is doing that, and then just make the punishment for that super severe, like paying it back times 10 or times 4 plus imprisonment.
Again, but these are people, these are low income individuals who wouldn't be able to afford paying that back times 10 times 4, and people with children. So if you're putting them in prison,
if they can't afford it, maybe don't commit the crime. Sure, but I don't think we should sacrifice children's education because some adults are going to commit crimes.
Right, but these adults that are committing crime, no one commits crime. Well, the vast majority of people who are committing crimes are not doing so because they want to commit crimes. They're doing so because they feel like they have no other option.
Okay, why does a parent have no other option than to steal money that's supposed to go to their child's education?
Because if they don't, maybe they can't put food on their child's plate.
Okay, I'm just curious. In regards to the ESAs, it seems like your main objection is potential misuse. Do you apply that to other government welfare programs, which would probably have even more misuse?
So I haven't gotten to my actual conclusion, which is just
go for it.
My main issue here is not the potential misuse. I'm just saying that is a possibility. My main issue is I think that for various reasons that the lowest economic bracket is disproportionately not white. And I think what's going to happen is you're going to have these primarily not white families pulling their kids out of public schools. And I think that over time, you're just going to end up with this artificial segregation in the school systems.
Gotcha. So we got low income families whose children disproportionately would be minorities like black children who are stuck in failing public schools, pulling their kids from the failing public schools. I think that's a win. I think take the kids from the failing public schools who are primarily minorities who are lower income and allow them to take that money and put it to use in a charter or a private school that has better outcomes for children.
No, but
that to me seems like a no-brainer.
It is important that public schools have a mix of all economic classes represented so that those low-income kids aren't stuck at bad schools. Because if your public school is a mix of poor kids and rich kids, like those rich kid families are going to want that school funded, which benefits the poorer kids.
Okay, so if right now there are public schools where there are minority children who aren't being in the same classrooms as rich children, because the rich children right now, in the absence of ESAs, just go to private school because they can afford it. Wouldn't it be better to allow the poor children to be able to use the education money to go to the same private school as the rich children?
Yes, I am not disagreeing, I don't think, with your thesis. I am just saying that I think that there are valid concerns about the effectiveness of it. Like if ESAs work as intended, I think that I am on board.
Okay.
I'm saying that my concern is that there is a risk that they would not work as intended, and I think that the possible consequences of that are significant.
So it seems like your biggest concern at this point then would be the potential for misuse of funds, right?
I think that the misuse of funds would... It's not necessarily the misuse itself, it's that the funds which are capable of being misused incentivize one specific demographic to pull their kids out of... if those families are using those funds to put food on the table, I'm not going to say that that is bad, but I'm saying that that is an incentive for those families to be the ones pulling their kids out of public schools.
Okay, so just one thing to think about here, and this will probably be the wrap up on this, but one thing to think about is food stamps, right?
Yes.
They're restricted to only certain foods. You can't use them on drugs, lottery tickets, alcohol, that kind of stuff. I assume you can't use them on alcohol. Maybe you can. But the point is there's restrictions on the use of funds. It's a relatively robust system so far. Maybe there's potential for some misuse, but a lot of people, not necessarily you, but a lot of people wouldn't reason that because there's some misuse of food stamps, we eliminate it entirely. And in the same way, we can actually limit the misuse of funds in ESAs. Maybe not entirely, but I think we can do it to an extent to where it's justified to actually implement the policy.
I think this is just where we have a fundamental disagreement, because I agree that the potential misuse doesn't necessarily mean that it isn't something worth at least investigating. And I would possibly be open to some sort of smaller ESA program. I think that it is just potentially dangerous to jump headfirst into something.
That's a great point. It's a great point. Can I quick address that? Because it's a good concern. It's extremely unlikely we would ever be able to dive head first. Even right now, the states that have ESAs, like in Arizona, it's extremely limited in terms of the number of students who can use it currently. It'd be primarily children with special needs, those who are already stuck in failing school districts. So the idea that we'd go 0 to 100 real quick, unlikely to happen based on what we've been seeing so far. I wish we would, but realistically, there would be time to iron out difficulties like misuse of funds, things like that.
Yeah. I think that fundamentally, politics and especially public policy is complicated, and everything has its potential drawbacks, including things that I support, and I'm not ignorant to the fact that some things I support may also have potential problems, and I just think that it's important to acknowledge that these things could have those drawbacks so that we're best able to limit those and try to approach those.
Awesome. Thank you. Appreciate it.